The Jets are coming off a huge season-saving win, but now might have to double down against the world champs if they're going to realistically get back into contention. Jen and I are going to wrap up the Dallas win, update roster news, and preview the Patriots game and more on Jets FM on EOFN for this Wednesday, the 16th of October, 2019, brought to you by ourlads.com, providing the best New York Jets depth charts in the business, and Athlon Sports, the leading publisher of preseason annuals for more than 50 years, sold in 60,000 outlets nationwide. All right, Jan, so huge win for the Jets. Really a huge win for the organization because we've been talking about it for weeks, that you can't judge this team until we get Darnold back. And at least Darnold, we know Mosley's got to come back too, but Darnold is the biggest player, of course, at the quarterback position, and what a difference he made.
Well, I mean, pretty clear. He was voted Offensive Player of the Week of the AFC, so it's a fairly good indication of just how good of a week he had. And first half was amazingly dominant. They think they took the air out of the ball a little bit in the second half, or maybe Dallas switched things around. But the first half was phenomenal. Put him in the right position. You heard what the offensive line said, although little shot across the bow at Luke Falk, which I understand, but to say they had a real, having a real quarterback buys you a half second more. He knows where to go. He knows how the plays are going to develop and how they're going to unfold, and pretty clear kind of difference maker that Darnold is. But I think we all kind of knew that. And while our criticism of Gaze and the offense is granted resolved to a certain extent with Darnold being back, clearly there's still things that they need to work on, and the hope has to be that Chris Herndon comes back, because if you add Herndon to the mix,
that's huge.
Anderson got off the schneid with a 92-yard touchdown and 5 catches, and Demaryius Thomas had some moments, had some moments as well. The little shaky one, catching the onside kick at the end, a little bit of heart attack on the bench, I think, when he juggled it. But he made the key play there. But you give him those two, especially
and Crowder.
When you have Bell out of the backfield, all of a sudden you have the makings of an offense, even though we'll talk about on the show Assembly being out for the year.
Yeah.
And I know you were very critical on the Alex Brown trade, but Brown has actually stood in very nicely in that position and given them some nice play, especially now with Assembly out for the year.
Alex Lewis, you mean?
Alex Lewis, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing about Alex Lewis is staying healthy. That's what it's about. Right. We know he's talented. He can play every position. That's a valuable player to have on your roster, and this is why. But now he's got to potentially start the whole year, and can he stay healthy? They also added the kid Connor McDermott, who, of course, was drafted by the Patriots, played with the Bills the last couple of years, so he's very familiar with the division. He got into some action, so there's more depth. I mean, Adoga's playing. The offensive line looked better because they had a quarterback that understood the assignments and everything else that comes with being a capable, quality starting quarterback in this league. So now it'll be interesting to see if they can start developing some of these younger, and not just younger, but also new linemen, because they're going to need it. There's still a lot of improvement to be made, as you said. Getting Herndon in there would be huge. But this is one of those seasons, again, it's not about even if by some miracle they get into playoff contention, it's not about the Super Bowl. Even if they somehow get into playoff contention, it's about building the foundation. And so that's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with some of these new players that are added to the roster, including McDermott, Vincent Smith, and others, as well as what happens at the trade deadline. I know, of course, Williams is the big story. I don't think he's going anywhere, but it will be interesting to see if the Jets add anything, especially a corner, before the deadline.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, Williams is the big story. A lot of talk as to whether or not he should or should not be traded, especially if they're not going to sign him to a longer-term extension. And there's the advanced stats that show, at least internally, that he's playing better than what he's shown in terms of production. But a lot of us, and myself included, will also look at the production, which is key. And yes, he is getting double-teamed at times, and yes, he is engaging blockers, and yes, he may be freeing up others. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to create your own stats. You need to be able to show up on the record book at the end of the day. And I don't think he has, to a certain extent. And part of it has to be a valid criticism as to whether or not he was worth the sixth overall pick. We all thought we got a steal at the time. So far, the production hasn't met the hype, for lack of a better term. So that's question one. And then you talk about cornerback. The Jets clearly need help in the secondary. I mean, though you and I chatted yesterday after the trade went down, I don't think either one of us were willing to pay that price for Jalen Ramsey.
No.
And Jacksonville waited and found a desperate Ram team to give up 2 number 1 picks in back-to-back seasons and I think a 4th rounder 2 years later. And I think I heard a stat today after the Goff trade. I think with the trade of Jalen Ramsey, the Rams will now have no first-round pick for 5 seasons in a row.
That's not the direction the Jets are going. That's for sure.
No,
so
really not.
Good. Look, nice for the Rams. They get themselves a corner. They're trying to win a championship now. But yeah, the Jets are in a different situation. And I mean, Peters, of course, was traded to open up the spot for Ramsey, and I'm glad he also didn't go to the Jets. Peters is to me another Tremaine Johnson. Don't need a player like that on this team. I don't even know if there is a corner out there the Jets can make a move for. You know, maybe it's on the roster. Maybe it's developing Kyron Brown, getting Blasson Austin healthy. Who knows? I don't think that the Jets are going to be trading any valuable assets at the deadline, especially even though they're coming off a win and 1-4. And look, they got one more game basically before the deadline. If they beat the Patriots by some miracle, then it will be a lot more interesting to see whether Douglas pulls the plug on a player that he believes can help him this year and the next couple of years. But if they lose to the Patriots, which will most likely happen, I just can't see any significant deal. If you want to trade a 4th or a 5th rounder to bring in, a player, a young player that maybe you could develop, that's fine. But again, this is about trying to build and lay a foundation with Darnold and a group that once again, everything that we've heard in the locker room, how they handled, we talked about how they were handling the losing. I'm very positive. I feel very good about everything that we were hearing during the losing streak. Very positive about what we've heard the last few days. I think this is a good group of players. I like the players. We like what they've built with the front office. I just think this is a good time to be a Jets fan. We just had such a bad month with Darnold being out and all the injuries that it clouded all of the excitement that we had going into week 1. Hopefully this is the restart to the excitement that we were hoping to get about 5 weeks ago.
So I'll color on 2 points. First, I think in the team not fracturing, and I think that's probably the good word for it. And clearly you're going to read a lot of that after a win, that the group stuck together, that they listened to the lessons that the veterans gave them. But seems fairly clear, at least, that the room didn't split, right? We didn't have a offense versus defense split, which clearly could have happened,
sure,
given how bad the offense was. And the team was able to retain its collective unit, for lack of a better term, as a team, as opposed to disparate parts that are coming together. And then second, I think the important part is look, even if they lose to the Patriots, and I think we both expect that's likely going to happen this week, even though the Patriots have shown some cracks and some flaws lately and are dealing with some injuries of their own, we can't have everybody jumping off ship. Even if you're 1-5, I know everybody's going, oh, we could run the table and go 9-2 down the stretch. And look, given the schedule, it is very possible. But I think the key, as we've talked about, is the major key is that the team is looking to grow. It's a development type of season, which is the key right now, and that's the goal for this season is the growth from the younger kids. Even for Darnold, because he is still a young kid. He's a second year pro. Seeing the growth out of him, seeing Herndon when he comes back, seeing the offensive line, as you talked about, the guys who they slotted in now growing. Defensively, seeing some of the younger guys start to take steps up. I mean, they didn't have Henry Anderson this weekend. Hopefully he'll be back, because he'll help at least in terms of the pass rush, which is going to be needed against Brady and some of the other quarterbacks that they play.
Hey, I really like the way that some of those defensive linemen have been stepping up. I think Kyle Phillips has been doing a really nice job. He's making plays. Fudakasi made a huge play. Quinnen Williams made a huge play. These are all young players.
Yep, absolutely. Even Adams is a young player, and Adams had the big play on the blitz on the 2-point conversion, forcing Prescott to throw the ball short. So Greg Williams has put the team for the most part in positions, look, we talked about it. The week they lost to Philly, they gave up 17 points. Now, Gravy, you can say Philly kind of, took the air out of the ball a little bit, but they got 14 points. 14 points defense on their own used from their own defense.
Yep.
But if you look week by week, for the most part, it hasn't been the defense that's been killed.
Nope.
Although the Cowboys did a good job in the 30-second drill at the end of the first half, and then in the second half, pretty much controlled the play. But Williams has done a good job putting the defense in position to try to win, even without Leonard Williams, even without Anderson this past week, and that has to be considered a plus moving forward in terms of the younger guys getting some action. The hope is that they utilize the experience that they got and build off that the remainder of the season.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any question. We finally got a break. We got a break with Cooper going out. What a huge break. And I thought it was funny because this happens all the time. Whenever a team that is considered a good team has injuries, like what we saw in this game with Cooper and the offensive lineman for the Cowboys, what do we see? We see a board of the Cowboys offensive players missing. Where was the board about all the Jet players missing? Well, that's because the Jets aren't a good football team, so we don't care about the Jets missing players. Matter of fact, so much so that we're going to harp almost the entire game, especially after the Jets kept scoring points and making big plays, about how inept the Jets offense was early on in the season. Like if this was their team the whole season. They would mention a little bit about the injuries to Darnold, but then they would just keep coming back about how inept the Jets offense was the last few weeks, not referencing again the fact that the reason they were inept was because of injuries, especially to Sam Darnold. So that's the kind of disrespect that you're going to get. But the point that I was trying to make anyway is that they got a break. They got a break with Cooper out, and I'm glad they got a break. It's good. I'm glad that other teams are getting it. We're not going to feel sorry for any team this year, that's for sure, with injuries, because we've had more than our share.
Absolutely. I never root for anybody to get hurt, but it is a situation where when the number one receiver goes down, you hopefully can take advantage by putting pressure on the remainder of the team and hoping that nobody else steps up. Gallup had a pretty good game. Zeke Elliott had a very good game. Prescott had a good second half, but the Jets were able to build enough of a cushion in the first half to withstand it, although barely, based upon what happened at the end of the game. So a good win by the team, a good win in terms of getting off the schneid, getting a nice little line next to that win column. That 0 was starting to look a little sightly after a while.
Yeah.
So it's nice to kind of see them get a win. Clearly, there's a lot more work that has to be done. Clearly, there's growth opportunities, and like I said, the big key, at least for me, is even if they lose to New England, which I think we all kind of expect, it's what kind of game do they play? Do the kids grow? And can you go into the quote-unquote soft part of your schedule, utilizing the experience you've gotten from the first 6 games of the year, even though you had all the injuries and you had all these guys out and hopefully get healthy, then now that you can start to build off of that and maybe string together a couple of wins to kind of make it interesting as the season goes on.
Yeah, we take a look at. We haven't talked a lot about the roster the last few weeks because they had the bye, and we also had the 1 week where we talked about the all-time Jet team. But if you take a look, Vincent Smith, here's just an unknown player. So we'll see. Look, he's got speed. He comes from a small college. He's a young kid. So we'll see if he's nothing more than just a special teams guy, a speed guy, somebody that could turn to gimmick plays, things of that nature. I'm sure Adam Gase can use as many players as he can get like that. But still, look, we'll see how that goes. We've talked about Braxton Berrios before. I want to see Braxton Berrios get in on the passing game now with Sam Darnold here. Otherwise, I'm not seeing what the spot is on this football team because he doesn't really add much to the punt return game. So hopefully with Darnold back, they get Berrios going. If not, then it's time to maybe give somebody else a chance. It's too bad that Greg Dortch is no longer on the practice squad, but they have a few other players down there. Fact is, though, I think at this point in time, like you said with Herndon before, we got to get him healthy. And, man, when I heard the news that Chris Herndon was going to be out for a couple of weeks.
I was shocked. I literally was shocked. I was like, the guy got suspended 4 games, and now he gets hurt?
I was like, we were just starting to feel that everything was turning the corner with Darnold coming back, and like 24 hours later, we hear that Herndon's out for a couple of weeks. It was like, are we in some sort of weird, bizarro world? So hopefully this won't be a long-term thing because hamstring injuries can have that effect. I want to see Wesco become some sort of factor this season. I don't know when. He's a young kid, willing to give him some time. Again, without Darnold, I'm not going to say anything, but hopefully soon we'll start seeing him make some plays. They got to get Ty Montgomery. They did use Ty Montgomery a little bit in this game, so maybe we'll start seeing him used in in some games upcoming. We also saw a little bit of Bilal Powell as well. So offensively, now is the time that we can start grading and start to take a look at the entire roster in a realistic way. And it's still not the complete team yet until Herndon comes back. But you get past the Patriots, win or lose, and that's when the schedule starts opening up. And it is and if they can, if they get everybody back and move on ahead with especially Mosley and Darnold with that schedule, they're even if they lose to the Patriots, they're going to flirt with about 6 to 8 wins. And I don't think we could ask for much more than that, considering the kind of start they got off to.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just looking at the schedule here. So you go after the Patriots, you have Jaguars, Dolphins, Giants, Redskins, Raiders, Bengals, Dolphins, Ravens, Steelers, Bills. And
well, those
look,
last 3 games will be tough. That's for sure.
Mad Dog Russo, win, loss, win, loss, because it's impossible to show. Look, most people didn't pick the Jets to beat the Cowboys this week. There's always upsets every week. But compare and contrast that to the first part of the schedule, where you had the Eagles, you have the Patriots twice. Look, we both think they should have beaten the Bills. The Browns are a team that hasn't played well. The Jets didn't have a quarterback really for that game. But you do look at the remaining part of the schedule, presuming they stay healthy.
That's the key.
It is something we both think that they should be able to start, stringing together a couple of wins. Whereas even if you're not in playoff contention, you all of a sudden start to look at this team. You start to see the pieces that may be components for the future. Very cognizant that Joe Jugler still has a lot of work to do.
And on defense, again, Leonard Williams, I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't see the Jets giving him a huge contract either. So it is a sticky situation, deciding exactly where to go with him. We'll leave it up to Douglas. It's going to be hard to let him go as well. Look, sometimes you got to overpay players. Look, if they can afford it, I think he gets the money that they can give him. I don't think that, and a franchise tag, I don't know. I don't know what he has to do to prove himself this year statistically. Will he ever be a sack guy? I'm going to leave that up to Greg Williams and to Joe Douglas to decide that. And whatever decision they make, these guys have been around the block. We'll trust it, and we'll find out whether or not Leonard Williams will be on this team long term. Look, the kid's 25 years old. I don't think. Again, it's in my guess. I don't think he's going anywhere, and I don't just mean the trade deadline. I think they're going to bring him back, but it would be a help if he could start making some plays, some impact plays, especially if the Jets play some meaningful games later this season.
I think that's the biggest thing we have not seen from him, right? So we have seen at times where he can engage multiple blockers. We've seen at times where he can maybe penetrate and get a tackle for a loss. What we haven't seen yet is a big moment type of play from him. What we haven't seen yet is him blow up a blocker and get into the backfield and sack a quarterback. These are the things that we both expected to see from him, even though we knew he wasn't an elite pass rusher. But we thought, based upon his skill set and his ability to play inside and outside a little bit, we thought we'd see a bit more from him. And that's the piece of the puzzle that I think you and I have been the most surprised at, that we haven't seen that from him, because when he came out of college, that was the kind of the moniker on him, right? That he would be able to make big time plays in big time moments and be able to generate pressure from either inside or outside, and we haven't seen enough of that. Now, granted, it could be scheme, it could be the way he's being utilized, but even with that, you'd still expect to see periodic flashes where you can look and go, okay, that's what they were talking about. And I think that's the piece of the puzzle that we haven't seen.
Yeah, that's why. Look, if you don't make the game-changing plays, the difference-making plays, you're not warranted as a sixth round, as a number 6 overall pick. That's just a fact. Now, are you still not a valuable player? Of course you can be. You could be a very valuable player. You could be still one of the best players on defense and not make those types of Aaron Donald plays. But that's why it becomes a sticky situation, because then if you are in a numbers crunch financially, you have a tough decision to make. I think that the opportunities will be there because Quinnen Williams will get better as the season goes on, again, if he's healthy. You get C.J. Mosley back. That even makes everybody better, including Leonard Williams. So that's the next step, is getting C.J. Mosley back. And we can only hope that with an extra day Monday night, with the way that they've handled him, that this is a game that hopefully they've almost targeted. That if we're going to get you back, maybe he could have came back against Dallas, but we're going to give you an extra week because we really want you back against the Patriots. We can only hope.
We can only hope. I mean, look, my viewpoint is I would love to have him back against the Patriots, but to me, the key is for him to be fully 100% healthy.
Agreed.
And if it's a matter of holding him out one more week to make sure he's 100% healthy for quote unquote the stretch run, then yes, I'd rather have him see that. And it's disconcerting he's been out this long, because I think both of us expected him back already. So having him come back this week would be a benefit. But to have a feeling that we may not see Herndon this week, which seems to be the case right now, and I would say Mosley's probably questionable at best.
Probably.
Look, this week, even with both of them, it would be a long shot to win. But if both of them are healthy for next week, then you start to think that, you have another playmaker on offense and you have your captain of your defense back. And all of a sudden, the team overall looks a heck of a lot better with those two guys in the lineup.
And I'm also pleased to see that it does appear Tremaine Johnson has been playing better. Has he made impact plays yet? No. But he hasn't looked poorly on the field. So he's kind of been like Leonard Williams and the rest of the defense over this first month or so of the season, where the guys have played a solid assignment football. They haven't blown up for bad plays. Hopefully, with guys getting back, they will be able to make impact plays. So I'm just happy at this point in time that Tremaine seems to be settling in nicely. It's a positive sign. They're baby steps, but with Adams out there, and Marcus May also had a huge game. Marcus May had a huge game against the Cowboys, made the big play against Witten, with Adams rushing the quarterback, covering Witten, making sure they didn't get that 2-point conversion. May almost came up with the interception late that would have sealed it. That seems to be his moniker, though. But anyway, it's nice to see May healthy. And when he's healthy, he's making plays. And so that's why if Tremaine Johnson can continue to play pretty decent like he's played, and hopefully even better than pretty decent because he's being paid for it, then the secondary picks everything up as well. And this defense with C.J. Mosley back becomes pretty damn good, especially with a healthy Quinnen Williams.
Absolutely. You see pieces like we've talked about, right? May being healthy is huge, and we talked about that before the season started, that we thought he could be a difference maker, but the problem is his health has held him back more than anything else his first couple of seasons. You have Adams. Hopefully you have Quinnen Williams. Hopefully you have Leonard Williams. You have Mosley. If Johnson can play as he's played, he's been better, has been perfect. We said better. All of a sudden, that's 6 out of the 11 guys that are on the field. You have Anderson. You talked about Kyle Phillips. You have the abilities to mix and match and move guys in and out of the lineup. All of a sudden, that defense that at times looked questionable now has components that fit together, that make the collective whole a lot better than the individual parts. We both are very cognizant that this team needs an elite pass rusher, and it's something we talked about the last 2 years. We also have talked about that the defensive backfield needs some assistance as well, and it's something even coming into this season we talked about. And even though you have May playing better than even expected, it is something an area of weakness as well. So those are 2 areas that Douglas are going to have to address in the future. But for now, you kind of look at the pieces that they have, and when Mosley comes back, you're a little bit more optimistic heading down the stretch, especially as you hit quote unquote the easier part of the schedule. But it'll be nice to see what Greg Williams can do with a full complement of
Oh yeah.
players and what kind of schemes he comes up with to try to make offenses go a little
Because don't
haywire.
forget, when we had a full complement of players, game one, that's when we made plays. That's when we had a defensive score. That's when we looked like the defense that I'm hoping that we're going to see for the rest of the season once Mosley and everybody else gets healthy. I'm also been very pleased with what we're seeing from Cashman. I mean, I think this kid's going to be a player. I think this kid's going to be a starting linebacker for the Jets for a few years down the road. I think this kid. The only thing was could he make the transition from the college game to the pro game, and he looks like he can do it, especially this early in his career.
Absolutely. Look, there are pieces. I mean, the draft this year was clearly a lot better than last year in terms of the guys that they've added. But we do know that there are things that need to be added in terms of helping the team overall get a lot better. And we've all talked about that this was an iterative process. This wasn't an overnight turn the team over and get better. This was something that was going to take this year. Now that Douglas is here, you hope his evaluation skills will help, and it's going to take next year, and it may take the year after. Right? You want to try to win to a certain extent while Darnold is on a cheaper contract, and that kind of allows you to spend money elsewhere. Offensive line still needs some work. We know we need some playmakers in terms of at wide receiver also, even though Anderson had a TD last week. And you have to add guys in free agency. You have to make smart free agent pickups in terms of guys who aren't drafted, which you and I both thought Dortch was one of those guys, even though they didn't keep him. But now with Douglas here and Gaze, the pressure. Look, I still don't know what Gaze is. I don't think any of us know what Gaze is, and we've heard all the stuff that happened in Miami. We had all the stuff when he came on board here, but you saw signs of it last week in terms of how the offense looked when you have a real quarterback who's able to get the ball out and get guys into the right formations and find the open receivers, and that aids the offensive lineman and it allows the offense to flow, which is something that's been lacking the last couple of weeks.
And as we said when they first brought in Sam Ficken, this is a kid that made big kicks in college. He's young. He just needed to find a place. Green Bay has Crosby. Didn't work out there. Wasn't going to work out there. So far, so good. I'm hoping the Jets have found their kicker. They've still got to see if he can kick the big one. He hasn't done that yet. He hasn't attempted it yet on the big stage. He did it in college. But that's a position, at least so far, that's been solidified. We haven't seen anything negative since he's been on board. But that's something that would also be nice if the first big kick comes, whether it's Monday night or later on in the season, that he'll be able to deliver, because that would make things a lot better for the organization moving forward.
No question. Though, as you said, Ficken has remediated a situation that was weak, because if you had a good kicker week one, not that I think that would materially change your playoff odds, but you'd be looking at 2 and 3 as opposed to 1 and 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, bottom line is, and we said this before last week's game, the Jets season was not over. You had to go through these 2 weeks. The Jets have held it off for at least one more week. 0-4, is it a miracle? I wouldn't say a miracle. Team has done it before. Even though 1-5 is still 4 games under 500, it's the same kind of situation. It's still 2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks later. That's the problem. 1-5, no matter how easy the schedule, probably impossible. But at least we got a hope. At least we got a shot, and that's all we can ask for right now. After what happened to us earlier this season, it's happened quick, and I'm glad. I'm glad that we have at least one more week and one big game to go on Monday night that hopefully can give us a shot in the arm, save our season, and give us something to get real excited about the rest of the way. But even if they lose, as you said before, let's hope it's a good football game, and it looks like at least we still have something positive to look forward to, even if they lose.
That's the goal here. I think the goal is to build off the success in the win, make it the game competitive. Look, I don't believe in moral victories.
No.
Right? But in a case like this, where you and I both know that we're looking for the future, right? And we're looking to see what happens. That's one of those things we need to see more growth from this team moving forward to build off the prior week. And that's what we want to see right now. Even if you don't win, you want to come out and go, okay, we didn't win, but you know what? We took what we had last week and we started moving. We started moving along. We started getting better and
That's
better
yeah.
and better.
They
You
should.
build- you
They'll be
take
better.
last
We
week, you
hope to
build
be. We'll
this
hope
week.
to be better this week.
Right, and then you hope to be better the
Yeah.
following week, because if you're better the following
Schedule
week,
is better.
you're likely going
Yeah,
to win.
schedule is better. Absolutely, that's the goal. Look, I could say, oh, it'd be a miracle. Oh, it'd be a long shot. We've seen how the Patriots have played and looked. If the Jets play a good football game, this is going to be a 4-quarter football game. This is not going to be anything like what we saw a few weeks ago. That doesn't mean they're going to win, but I am anticipating that and hoping, I guess you can use the word also, expecting, I think is also a good word, that this is going to be a good football game that is going to go into the fourth quarter. If it's not, I'm going to be disappointed. I expect more, especially because the Patriots offense has not made it easy for them. As good as their defense has been, as good as their special teams has been, when you don't have an explosive offense, and they don't have one right now, that means that they're going to be in a lot of football games. The games are going to be pretty close. You're going to be able to get to them if you can make some big plays. They haven't had that happen to them this year because they played a lot of weak football teams, including us with a third-string quarterback. But now we have Sam Darnold. I expect this to be a good football game. I'm not going to say we're going to win, but I think this is going to be a competitive football game.
I hope you're right. I believe you're correct also. I would hope that what we saw last week wasn't an aberration, that it starts to become a bit more the norm in terms of how they've played. But I will hold off judgment until I kind of see them build off of this, right? Because New England likes to jump on you early and start to build from there. So I think getting off to a good
It's
start,
imperative. Yes.
huge. Like a good first drive, right? Punch him in the mouth a little bit. It's New England's going to respond anyway, but it's a matter of do we take it to New England as opposed to what happened in week one, when the week we faced them or earlier in the season, where they just kind of beat us down and kept beating us down and beating us down. Now with Darnold back, you would hope with the offense and especially if Herndon plays, you would hope we could start to do a little bit of damage against a New England defense that's been a lot better than I think that any of us expected coming into the season.
Don't forget, the Patriots have won the Super Bowl before and gotten blown out early in their Super Bowl seasons. So just even if the Jets go out and beat them, it doesn't say anything negatively about the Patriots. And I think what it just and I'm not going to say it also, it doesn't say like, oh, all right, now that the Jets beat the Patriots, they're going to go to the playoffs. It's football, and I think because it's going to be a competitive football game, I think we're going to have our chances. So we'll talk about it next week, and let's hope that we have something more positive to talk about again, because this was nice to kind of be positive and kind of feel good about talking about the New York Jets for a change.
Can't agree with you more.
All right, Jan, appreciate it. You're going to the Ranger game tomorrow, so enjoy that. Walk the dog, and I'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good.
Take care.